when Mattia first asked about members sending in stuff for a show and tell, it was just by chance that I got two different things in the mail around that time. And when I saw them, I thought, oh, these are going to be really cool to talk about. Now, the thing about these two, they're not related specifically, but it occurred to me, I got them about the same time in the mail, that it was sort of going from the sublime to the ridiculous, I thought, in philately. But it does speak to perhaps the variety of things still available to us in philately to delight us. These two cards are from Belgium.
They are the first two stamps in a series issued from 46 to 49. And they are, in my estimation, beautiful philatelic productions. They're famous historical figures right from the 7th century up to the 18th century in the history of the area of northern France and the lowlands. They're all beautifully engraved, probably engravings from the 19th century, maybe romanticized images of medieval and Renaissance characters, but very beautiful. And I only have, out of the full 18 stamps, I only have these first two. They are very hard to come by. I don't recall if these are first day cancels, but it didn't concern me. I really like the maximum cards, and when I can find more of these, I will try to pick them up.
In the other mailing I got around that time, I got Austria's new souvenir sheet, which is the other picture, and that's sort of the ridiculous. So you go from the sublime to the ridiculous. If you put up the souvenir sheet, it is actually toilet paper.
This is a, Austria Post has a very good sense of humor. They issue a lot of different items with different materials. Like they've issued crystal stamps with crystals and a whole bunch of stamps made of wood, stamps made of ceramic, all kinds of materials. So because of the toilet paper shortage early in the COVID pandemic, they decided to issue a souvenir sheet showing social distancing, and they did it on actual toilet paper, as Dan started to mention. So these were issued in strips of 3 that were actually printed on toilet paper. They laminated the back with a self-adhesive film to give strength and support to the toilet paper. So you don't have to wet the paper. You just peel the backing and you can stick it on. And the actual stamp is the bit at the right, and it's got a surcharge, which was the money from the surcharge went to support charities. And the perforations are like the perforations in between the sheets of toilet paper. So that's what it is. It's Austria's COVID-19 issue. And the fact that it's got a baby elephant on there, so that was their yardstick for social distancing by 1 meter. Austrians love baby elephants. They have a baby elephant bronze statue at the entrance to the Vienna Zoo.
So not that I love to bore you with Zeppelin stuff, but I do. So this actually is a United States Zeppelin cover from the Pan American flight, which was a flight that went from Friedrichshafen to Seville, and then from Seville to Brazil, and then Brazil up to Lakehurst, and then Lakehurst back to Seville and Friedrichshafen by the Graf Zeppelin. It's a 1930 flight, and this particular cover was mailed in the United States in a little place called Teaneck, and it was flown on the Graf Zeppelin to Seville and then on to Friedrichshafen, and then sent by ship from, it would be transported probably by train to the coast and then by ship to the United States. On the back of the cover is a green New York City receiving mark. And it has $1.30, which was the rate to go across the ocean on that flight. This is the same flight, which is well known because this is the flight that the US issued the 3 Zeppelin stamps for, the 65 cent, the $1.30, and the 260. Unfortunately, this cover would be worth about $500 more if it was a $1.30 Zeppelin stamp on it instead of the 2 definitives you see here. One of the reasons that I'm showing this is because I just purchased it fairly recently, but if you can see on the left side of the round flight cachet, there is a signature, and that's Grace Drummond Hay, signing, and then Graf Zeppelin underneath. She was the first lady to fly across the Atlantic Ocean on a Zeppelin. She did the Graf Zeppelin flight to America. Later, she flew on the round the world flight. She was a reporter for the Hearst newspaper chain. She was very young when she married Lord Drummond Hay, who was about 50 years her senior. And she was a widow about 6 years after being married with a lot of money. Then she got a job as a Hearst newspaper reporter. And she traveled. She was on one of the first Pan American clippers. She did a lot of travel. She had a partner who was a German citizen of the United States, whose wife was mentally insane. So they couldn't get married, but they traveled together a lot. They were actually captured in the Philippines when the Japanese seized that American territory in the Second World War, and they were released in 1944, went back to the States, but they were both, of course, had suffered badly in the concentration camps and or the internment camps, and never really recovered their health. But this cover is signed by her. The interesting thing for me is she wasn't on this flight. So someone has flown this cover, taken it somewhere where she was, and had her sign it, because she was probably one of the most famous early passengers of the Graf Zeppelin. And now very few people even know who she was. So in her time, she was a media star. So that was why I purchased this cover and what I liked about it. And I thought I would share that.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is the booklet of the Canada Post stamps that were given to just the Canada Post employees just prior to Christmas, actually. And it turns out that one of my friends, her name is Marg. In my letter to you, Mattia, I put M. I didn't mention her name, but anyhow, Marg, I went to school from kindergarten to grade 12 with Marg, and she's now the postmistress in my little hometown in Newfoundland, Seal Cove. And so she knows I'm a stamp collector. So before Christmas, I get a letter in the mail from her, and inside is this booklet of stamps. And there was a letter with it as well. I don't think, Mattia, I sent you pictures of that, did I?
No.
Okay, so anyhow, so all of the Canada Post employees were supposed to have gotten this booklet of 12 stamps. And in my searching around, since I've discovered this, this was actually out there, I've gone to a few postal outlets, and I have met several people who have gotten the booklet of stamps, and then I've met quite a few people who have not received the booklet. So they're wondering if maybe their managers at their post offices didn't give them their copy of the book. So there are 55,000 employees in Canada Post, and each one of them is supposed to have gotten that booklet of merci stamps. There's a very nice note with them, and it was a thank you from Canada Post to its employees for helping keep things running during this pandemic, And so it's not for sale anywhere. And the only way I've been able to get my hands on any of those is with a few $10 Tim Hortons cards, and a bit of bribery will get you everywhere sometimes. So I took one of the stamps from the extras that I've gotten now, and I actually mailed myself a letter. So I now have that stamp on a cover, So it's not going to be something that a lot of people get, but happy hunting to those of you who like to search for covers, Okay, this one here goes back to, I think, 1989 or 19 1989. So I'm living in Port aux Basques in Newfoundland, and every year my wife and I, we would send out a Christmas card. And this one here, so at Christmas time, just prior to Christmas, we've got our Christmas cards set up, and so it's late at night, and I bought, I think 6 or 8 of this booklet of 10 Parliament stamps, 38 Parliament stamps per booklet. And so I've got the cards, I've gotten the cards ready, and now it's, like I said, 11 or so at night. And I decide I'm going to put the stamps on now. So I open up the booklets and I'm peeling the stamps off. And then I notice that one sticks. And when I look closely, and you can see it on this stamp here, on your left-hand side, on the bottom 2 stamps, one of the perforations is missing. And then on the top stamp on that same left side, there's a perforation missing as well. And when you look at the booklet of 10 stamps, it folds in half. So it's like the perforation that's missing. I don't know if I really don't know the process here, but maybe the stamps were folded and the perforation and the needle that creates the perforation just wasn't working at that particular spot. So next morning, I'm living in Outport, Newfoundland, so there are post offices everywhere around you. Like there had to be 5 nearby in different communities. I just jumped in the car and I bolted, and I went everywhere looking for booklets of these Parliament stamps, but alas, nobody had any. They were all sold out. So those people back there in the Outports who would have been putting these stamps on envelopes would have probably have noticed that one of them had some damage on it, and so what? So they just put the stamp on an envelope. So it's possible, you stamp collectors, that you could find one of these if they didn't get destroyed once received from somewhere. It's possible you could find one of these somewhere. So happy hunting with that one. So the Canada Post Office in Port aux Basques, the people there, they knew me fairly well, and they also knew I was a stamp collector. So every afternoon after coming back from school, as I was a teacher then, so about 4:15 in the afternoon, I get back from my school, I drop into the post office, and so the foyer is where our mailbox is, and inside there's this woman named Joan who is waving frantically at me to come in. And so I go in and she says, "We have some stamps here that might be of interest to you." And it turned out that there was a sheet of 100 stamps. So the 38-cent Parliament stamps were in sheets of 100. And so she showed me this one. And if you notice, the picture is up in the corner. So it's not a centered picture in the stamp. And there were 27 stamps left in the file when she showed it to me. So I got them all. I paid for all of them. So I don't know if, and no one ever told me this, so I don't know if any of the postal workers decided to take a few for themselves, wondering if there's ever going to be any value to them or not. So I would have to go, I mean, these people are either retired or dead now, so I would have a hard time finding them. But this stamp, if some of them actually got sold and put on letters, it's possible that there's a stamp out there on a cover somewhere. So I brought these to your attention here tonight because, well, especially for these last 2 I've shown you, there's a possibility that there could be a cover somewhere that nobody's really noticed. And so bring to your attention, let's see if you've found it. I have not found any information about any of these Parliament stamps anywhere in all the years I've looked. So if somebody's got something to contribute here to me, I'd be happy to listen to it. And as for the merci, thank you stamp from Canada Post, I understand that some people are selling them online somehow, but I've been able to get a couple of sets of the stamps, partial sets of the stamps, for a few Tim Hortons $10 gift cards.
This is a couple of pieces. The one on the right is a private postcard that I've had in my collection for a while, and my recent acquisition is the cover on the left. So both of these advertise a product called Van Mariani, which is, so Van Mariani was a coca wine. It was a kind of patent medicine that was created in the 1860s by Angelo Mariani, who was a French chemist from Corsica. So Mariani became intrigued with coca, which is where cocaine comes from, of course. So he started marketing this wine, which he originally called Van Tonique Mariani, which was made from a Bordeaux wine and the coca leaves. And so the ethanol in the wine acted as a solvent and extracted the cocaine from the coca leaves. And basically it was a stimulant. And so each fluid ounce of wine contained about 6 milligrams of cocaine. And in fact, the Van Mariani that was exported actually had even a little more. It had about 7.2 milligrams per ounce in order to match the, so apparently there were similar drinks in the United States that had that level of cocaine content. So the ads for Van Mariani claimed that it would restore health, strength, energy, and vitality. And he apparently didn't pass the recipe down to subsequent family generations. So when he died, the recipe was lost. But he marketed, you know, like a lot of these patent medicines, they were marketed as, you know, and could cure anything basically. And he got all kinds of testimonials from really prominent people. One of them that I found online was an ad from the Pope. So I'm not sure actually which Pope this was. Oh, Pope Leo the 13th. He purportedly carried a hip flask of Van Mariani with him and awarded a Vatican gold medal to Angelo Mariani for the product. He wrote that he fully appreciated the beneficial effects of this tonic wine and forwarded to Mr. Mariani as a token of his gratitude a gold medal bearing his august effigy. So the other thing, which is interesting about Van Mariani, is that it was apparently an inspiration when John Pemberton made his coca wine drink, which ultimately was the precursor of Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola originally had actual cocaine, you know, it was made from coca leaves. So so that's basically it. The other thing I just want to mention is that this postcard on the right, so this is actually kind of an illegal postcard because advertising on the front of private postcards wasn't actually allowed by the Canadian Post Office until 1897 in December. So this one was mailed in 1895. So it's actually illegal, but a lot of this illegal advertising went through with no problem.
This is more of a curiosity, I think, than anything, but it is an official Canada Post postal scale. It's a Pitney Bowes. As many of you will know, the Pitney Bowes was founded in 1920 by an inventor, Pitney, and Bowes, who was a marketer, and it was designed specifically for metered mail. Canada joined or signed an agreement with Pitney Bowes in 1922, and Canada Post has been working with them since then. These scales went through a whole bunch of iterations. And as far as I can find out, this 4 kilogram scale is about the last of those iterations. And I probably late 60s, 70s, I'm still trying to work on a precise date. I have to tell you, they're a bit of a drug on the market. I picked this up at auction for $20. But they're easily available for a reasonable price, plus or minus $50 on eBay. Of course, the shipping can be anywhere up to $150. There's a good reason for it because this is a boat anchor. It weighs about 50 pounds. It's built like a rock. It still works perfectly. And it's sort of a neat thing to have on the desk. And now I know exactly how much every piece of paper I put out of my desk weighs. But I thought for $20, this was a nice piece of curiosity to have to complement my collection.
Since about 2010, Portugal has issued a number of stamps devoted to the museums, both the architects for the buildings as well as the collections and whatever. And in 2019 and 2020, they issued a collective 25 stamps, mainly devoted to the centenaries of the various museums there. But some of them are, at that point, were over 110 years old. So the centenary thing is kind of an expansion. I was quite pleased with them because they describe, or they display both mainly the interior, some exteriors of the museums, but also items from the collections. And just to give you an idea of the different types of, especially these 25 stamps from 2019 and 2020, there were like 5 archaeology museums, 4 which I call multidisciplinary, 4 national ones, a couple of art, a couple of municipal ones, 2 religious ones, and an assortment of all the way from anthropology to transportation. I found they do a wonderful job in creating and displaying their stamps, especially the museum ones. They also have museum stamps devoted to different collections, including things like historic buildings, some of the postal ones and whatever. And so they've put out a lot of museum stamps, you know, especially in the past decade. Museums are one of my hobbies, and you know, I was quite pleased with these. They're readily available, so they're not scarce, and you can still get them. But just the aesthetics of it, of how they created these stamps, is quite something. They're very beautiful stamps, and they, you know, they feature them quite well. So there were 13 in 2019 and 12 in 2020. I haven't seen anything for 2021, so maybe they stopped with just the 25. Considering how many museums there are in Portugal, I don't know how old some of the other ones are, but there's still a lot of museums for which they could, you know, put out stamps. They've got an enormous quantity of museums there, as do Spain and France and Italy and the other countries in that area.
Unfortunately, Larry has the problem today, and he cannot join us, but he has submitted this Chad proofs that he acquired recently, and these are part of the musical instruments of Chad. And I don't know if you are aware, but Larry is collecting different items, including musical, old musical instruments. And that's why he has acquired this group of proofs. 3 of them are signed by Jacques Gauthier, who designed many French and French colony stamps between 1981 and 1998. And he wanted to share with you this particular things and go through also Gautier's story. But I will, for tonight, I'll just leave to you the possibility to look at these 6 proofs, and then I will move forward to other things.
Just to help you, Mattia,
yeah.
the items that he's collecting are not the standard musical instruments. They're I guess what he would call folk instruments.
Okay.
They include, you know, these ones here, but they also include older ones that sort of became the more famous ones, like ones that may have morphed into pianos or into like lyres, became, you know, lutes or different things or whatever.
Yeah.
As part of his background, he plays or has played professionally a number of Indian instruments, including a sitar. So he's quite accomplished as far as music is concerned. And he's not only played it, but he's taught a few people too. So he's got that background, and he loves the different types of folk instruments.
Gordon has a problem because he cannot connect. So he was asking me to present this cover, but he had a lot to say about it, unfortunately, and I think we are going to miss that tonight. Basically, this is a cover from Cape Parry, which is a station from what he has been explaining to me. It's situated at the northern tip of the Parry Peninsula in the Amundsen Gulf, and is approximately 100 kilometers north of the nearest hamlet of Paulatuk in the Northwest Territory. There are no more settlements now in the area, so there is now a bird sanctuary in the area, and the area is controlled by the Nuvialut, First Nation people, and you need a special permit to visit the area. So this is, if you want, it's an historic location, a location which doesn't exist anymore. The Cape Parry function in the early 50s was twofold: high Arctic weather station and a distant early warning, namely a military outpost. Gordon was very interested in this one because, first of all, it's supposed to be not very common, and it's also signed by the officer in charge. And he likes all the Arctic and Antarctic covers, and normally in the other countries they all have very nice cachets, but in the case of the Canadian ones, it looks like the only type of identification that they've been putting on the cover has been the address on the top left and some sort of a cancel, specific cancel, but no cachets available in this case. And of course, there is the stamping mailed in Canadian Arctic at the bottom left.
I don't think that was even canceled. I think that's the OIC's regular hand stamp for documents.
Oh, okay.
Just an opinion.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Anyway, the only other comment I would add, because he has put a very long presentation, but considering the time tonight, I'm not going through all that. Is indicating that, by the way, with that type of cancel, there is no date. So the only assumption you could make is that it has been mailed probably between June 24, 1985 and March 31st, 1987, looking at the type of stamp which has been used and the rate.
This is a postcard, and recently I've been collecting and researching Hollywood cancels, right, from Hollywood, California, and this is one of them. Now I wanted this postcard because of the cancel, because you can see that the killer portion is has the word Hollywood, and it's rather ornate killer bar cancel, and it's got these ornate lines here. But what's really interesting is the postmark says Hollywood, California. Now, Hollywood merged with the city of Los Angeles in 1910. And after the merger, the word Hollywood disappeared from postmarks of the machine cancel. They still showed up, the word Hollywood still showed up on hand cancels, but not on the machine cancels. And what I've discovered is that every once in a while, occasionally, some people in Hollywood, usually the Chamber of Commerce, want the name restored to a cancel for publicity purposes. And I have found an earlier version of this cancel from 1937 and 38, which has the Hollywood, the same killer bars with the word Hollywood, but with Los Angeles in the postmark. So this one is from 1948. So it is practically, I can't find anything in the philatelic literature about this, and my emails to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce don't ever get answered. But But based on this postcard and another cover that I found, I think that this cancel was used at the request of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce to promote the city. Right? And you can see that this postcard obviously is intended to promote the city. It's from the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. It talks about how famous the city is as the headquarters of the motion picture and radio business. Right? And this postcard says first day mailing, Hollywood, California postmark. The other cover I have actually says first day cover, but it's not really a first day cover. It's for the first day of use of this particular cancel. Now, what else is interesting about this postcard is the addressee or the recipient, Harry Kahn at Columbia Pictures. Harry Kahn was one of the legendary studio bosses of Hollywood. He founded Columbia Pictures, and when he founded Columbia Pictures, for its first 10 or 15 years, it was considered not the most prestigious studio to work at. It had no star system, unlike Warner Brothers or MGM, which had signed up lots of actors that they could groom to be advertised as stars. Harry Kahn didn't have any stars. Most actors would try to avoid working at Columbia if they could avoid it. And so Harry had to borrow actors from other studios, and Louis B. Mayer at MGM nicknamed it Siberia because he threatened to send people to Columbia if they misbehaved. And all throughout the 30s, Harry Kahn's most marketable stars were the Three Stooges, who were rejects from MGM. And then in the 1940s, he finally got one marketable star that he could groom and advertise and people wanted to see, and that was Rita Hayworth. Right? And after that, from the 40s onward, Columbia began to become a more prestigious studio. Harry Kahn was also notable for being one of those obnoxious people in Hollywood. He was legendary for infamous for temper tantrums and screaming at people, yelling at people. And he was the original Harvey Weinstein. He had a reputation for sexually harassing Rita Hayworth and other actresses. He was not a nice person, but nonetheless a major part of Hollywood history. So I saw this card and I thought, my God, it's addressed to Harry Kahn. I've got to go get it. So that's why I purchased it from eBay, as well as for the cancel. This cancel, it's hard to find. I mean, I don't know how many are out there. I've only seen 2 covers show up on eBay or Del Camp in the last 2 years with this cancel, and I managed to get both of them. But it's not an easy cancel to find. And that's what I have to say about it. This is another Hollywood cover, right? And you can see it's the same killer lines with the same word there. And but this one, as you can see, is from 1938, right? And you can see that instead of Hollywood inside the postmark, it says Los Angeles. And as I've mentioned, over the decades, there's always been some political rivalry, for lack of a better word, between the people and Chamber of Commerce of Hollywood and the post office as to what name of city to put inside the postmark. The Postal Service prefers Los Angeles because there actually is no city called Hollywood anymore, but the people of Hollywood like to have Hollywood in there. But here's the compromise postmark over here. This is typical of U.S. postmarks in the 20s and 30s and up to the mid 40s. It's got that hand cancels, that is. It's got that ovate killer bar, often nicknamed the football. It says Los Angeles, California, but it says Hollywood Station here. So this is Hollywood Post Office in Hollywood. What's interesting about it? So you have it's posted from the same post office, but it's got 2 different names on the postmark: Hollywood Station and Los Angeles.
You know that I have an interest also in postcards, so I wanted to show this one because this is one of my latest acquisition, and it's particularly dear to me because on one side, on the back, there is a relatively uncommon square circle postmark from Myanmar, from Burma. It's Pakoku, which is a town which now is not that small, but anyway, it's a port on the river in the center of Myanmar, and the postcard has been addressed to UK and goes through the Sea Post Office. So there is quite a bit from a postmark point of view. But on the other side, on the front, there is a picture of a Burmese road restaurant. And I have been showing also on Facebook in the latest weeks different postcards of different jobs or different activities that were done in the past which don't exist anymore. And this is one that falls in that category. Basically, in the old times, not only in Burma, and I'll show you afterwards another one in a totally another country, they used to have this road restaurants. So the people, they would prepare the food quite a few times in the street, and they would sell it to people in particular parts of the city, to people who would get off work or would be, you know, around for business. And it's always intrigued me, the hygiene question, because all the pictures I've seen, there is no place where to wash the dishes or wash the cutlery. So I was always been wondering how they were cleaning them, or they were just shaking them a little bit and just passing it to the next customer. So this is one in Burma, and here there is another one in Naples, and it's very similar, similar setup. So this guy was even equipped with some chairs and a little table in the center, and a sort of cooking device, and I guess he was cooking some sort of simple meal. But in the middle of a square, in the center of Naples, so basically it was evidently there wasn't too much traffic at the time, and he could set up his own little road restaurant out in the open. And I guess my question about washing the dishes, when it was raining, then they could wash the dishes, use the rain to clean them. But it looks like the people were enjoying it.
My item isn't either rare or difficult to find, but for me, I was pleased to get it because it acts as a bridge between my two different collecting worlds, the philately on the one side and mineralogy on the other. I'm a rock hound. So this is the 1992 Canadian set of 5 stamps that were issued for the 150th anniversary of the Geological Survey of Canada. They were designed by Raymond Bellemare, and there were photographs of the specimens held in the collections of the Canada Geological Survey and the Canadian Museum of Nature. And they were by a famous photographer called Hans Blum. And it was one of the very early sponsored sets of stamps from Canada Post. This particular one was sponsored by the Mining Association of Canada, which was also recognized on the back cover of the booklet. Members may remember my article on one of these stamps, the blue one there, the second one along, which is featured in a recent club newsletter. But the booklet pane as a whole illustrated 2 items of each of the 5 stamps. And the booklet pane also had on the top in English and on the bottom in French, brief notes on what each species was, where it came from, and an interesting factoid, I guess, that they thought was going to be interesting in 1992. So for tonight's show, I've actually prepared each one of these stamps with an actual mineral specimen of the same species illustrated from my collection to tell its story in brief. So first of all, the anniversary that was celebrated on the stamps was the 150th, as I say, of the Geological Survey of Canada. It was founded in 1842 after the province of Canada voted the grand sum of £1,500 to create an organization to outline its geology. And when you're talking about a country as big as Canada, that's no light undertaking. Its first director was William Edmund Logan, W.E. Logan, a Montrealer of Scottish ancestry. And he was ultimately honored for his achievements by having Canada's highest mountain named after him, and also a mineral species, W.E. Loganite, which is found just about only here in Canada. And the Geological Survey itself played a very key role in its 150 years in exploring, mapping, and opening up the West and the North in particular. And amongst its many other accomplishments, it predicted the Yukon gold deposits. It discovered Canada's biggest coal deposit in Alberta, and also the Red Deer Valley dinosaur fossils, which are world renowned. So if we move on to the second slide, we'll take the first one there, which is copper. Now, copper is, for those philatelists who are not mineralogists, it's a native element, and that means it's completely unalloyed with any other element. It's one of very few, just a handful of elements that occur in its native state as pure copper in this case. And the one on the stamps comes from Kamloops in BC. And the factoid that was given along on the booklet was that Canada is the 4th in the world for copper production. And I'm sad to say that 30 years later, we've slipped down the table down to 11th. This particular specimen of mine on the left is 4 centimeters long. It's a Hackley metallic mass of just about pure copper. And as I say, one of the few of the natural elements found in nature. The next one in the middle there is sodalite. And sodalite is sodium aluminium silicate. It comes from Bancroft, Ontario, which is just 10 minutes up the road from where I'm speaking to you at the moment, from the cottage on the edge of the Haliburton Highlands. The one on the stamp was a polished slab, and the factoid was it's an ornamental stone. And I told the story of the mystery of the ornamental stone in the newsletter article, so I won't repeat that here for time. But the specimen you see here from my collection is about 4 centimeters long, and it's almost pure, deep blue and crystalline, but it's not polished. So that is how it appears in its native state. And Bancroft remains one of only 3 significant locations in the entire world where you can find decent sodalite, the others being Afghanistan and Madagascar. The third one here is a specimen of, which one is this? Oh, this is my gold specimen. It's a little gold nugget. It's tarnished, so it looks a little ungold-like. But the specimen on the stamp is again a native element, one of these very few ones that is native. It comes from Klondike in Dawson City in the Yukon. But the specimen on the stamp is a little bit misleading, shall we say, because it's actually very tiny. It's only 5 millimeters long, so absolutely tiny, but it's a very beautiful specimen nonetheless. The factoid is that Robert Service is quoted on there, talking about the miners who moiled for gold up in the Yukon. And in fact, Robert Service lived in Dawson City, and you can go to his home there now. It's a tourist attraction and a very nice place to go. My specimen here is a nugget. It's about 2 centimeters long, and it's been eroded from where it would have originally been part of a rock. It survives because gold it can dissolves in just about nothing whatsoever on the planet. So it survives over millennia, and it's been rounded by water action. And the last slide, the 4th specimen there on the left, galena. Galena is lead sulfide. It's the stamp again is gray metallic crystals from somewhere called the Polaris mine on Little Cornwallis Island in Nunavut. And the factoid given there is that Canada is the 3rd largest country in the world for lead production. 30 years later, we're now 8th. However, the Polaris mine, which has now been closed for about 20 years or so, does have the distinction of having been the most northerly mine anywhere in the world. Little Cornwallis Island is north of Baffin Island. It's way up there. It's even north of the little outstation called Alert. My specimen here, which is actually very similar to the one featured on the stamp, is about 6 centimeters long. It's also got those gray metallic crystals, and these crystals with their sharp faces are absolutely natural. It hasn't been polished, it hasn't been cut. That's the way it comes out of the ground. And lastly, on the right-hand side, as you're looking at it, is something called grossula. Bit of a strange name. It's actually a member of the garnet family, which is much better known. It's calcium aluminium silicate, and the stamp features orange dodecahedral crystals from the Jeffrey mine in Asbestos, Quebec. Of course, now you might have seen in the news a few months or so ago, asbestos being so out of favor, the good folk of asbestos have designed a new name for the place, and as of last October, I believe, asbestos is now Val des Sources, which is a much nicer name, I guess, than asbestos. The factoid is that these things are cut into some beautiful gems, which is not really, that's a bit of a stretch, because this particular garnet does not, generally speaking, lend itself to gem cutting. But the fact remains that the specimens from this Quebec location are just about the very best of any location anywhere in the world. So still something to be proud of. My specimen here is a bit of a darker orange than that on the stamp. It's an orange crystal mass, about 3 centimeters across. You certainly couldn't cut that one into a gem. So that's my my kind of pairing of minerals and stamps, and I'll leave you with just one little trivia question to see if anyone can come up with the answer to this. And that is that these mineral stamps in 1992 was not the first time that a mineral had actually been depicted on a Canadian stamp. Does anyone know when the first stamp was issued that featured a Canadian mineral?
Was it 1957 Canada geophysical year?
Yeah, not quite. It was certainly a geological themed stamp, but no, not really a mineral featured on that one.
Was it the BC Centennial stamp where they've got the miner on it?
Again, it's a good geological one. It's one that I got in my my themed collection, but no, it doesn't really have a depiction of a mineral itself. I'm being very challenging here, and perhaps if no one's got the answer.
There was a green stamp. Now I'm not quite sure. Green stamp, I think it was a 5-cent issue, and in the middle of the stamp was something that looked like a gold nugget or something.
I shall have to go back and have a look for that. It's not ringing any bells, but I'll have a look. I was actually thinking if there are any other suggestions, then I believe the answer, although I'll check that last one. I think the answer is 1962 in those definitives. If you look at the 1-cent stamp of the portrait of the Queen, the whole definitives were supposed to celebrate resources, and the 1-cent was celebrating mineral exploitation. And there is a small, very small, up in the corner, little picture of a quartz crystal, which you will easily miss if you don't know your minerals, but it's there.
Great.
Thank you, Mattia.
Thank you, Chris. So I think for tonight we close it here.
Thank you to all of the members who presented items. That was super. Every time I see something like this, I learn something new. Just a fast closing remark that we are 1 year away from CAPEX 22, which will take place in Toronto next June. And the CAPEX Organizing Committee has started putting out a newsletter. And if you would like to sign up for that newsletter, they're going to have it sent out every 2 weeks. You can just go to the CAPEX 22 website and sign up for their newsletter. So you might want to do that and find out how things are going with CAPEX and what, as new activities take place, or are finalized, and they'll be posting those on a newsletter so you can keep up to date. Thank you all very much for attending our June meeting. And hopefully we'll see you all next month.